thank you so much for joining for this one. And it's a great one because, well, there are people that are doing probably very similar stuff to what you would like to be doing. I assume that's why you're here. We're going to be hearing about how the Roundhouse young creatives are carving their own paths across the industry, and they're ready to share all of their insights and learnings with you today. So please, let's give them a very, very warm welcome. We have got Sophia, Verity, and Isaac joining us. Woo! Come on up. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here this afternoon. You're joining us for the Self-Made and Production Futures Q&A. I'm Verity. I'll be your host for this panel. I'm an audio podcast producer, and I have previously done the traineeship at the Roundhouse for Transmission Roundhouse, which is like an audio production part of the Roundhouse. Just to give you a bit of an idea of what Self-Made is here at the Roundhouse and what it does, it's a program that the Roundhouse offers to freelancers and entrepreneurs. And all of these freelancers and entrepreneurs are in the creative industries. And they do that through workshops, support, courses, and events like this one. So today you're going to be hearing from two really talented people from the Roundhouse. And they've been supported by the Roundhouse in different ways. And they've been also doing some great work in the creative industries themselves. And they're going to be sharing their journeys, their insights, some tips and tricks, kind of telling you how they got started and like sharing that knowledge. So please give them a warm welcome. This is Isaac and Gabby. Thanks so much for joining us. Just before we get going, there will be time for a bit of a Q&A at the end. So if you want to like think about anything you want to ask, just keep it in your mind and we'll get back to you at the end. So just starting out, I'd love to hear about, just quickly give us an introduction, each of you, and like who you are and how you've been involved in the Roundhouse, just briefly.
Hi guys, my name's Isaac. I'm a filmmaker and curator. I run a production company called NC Productions, and I've been involved in the Accelerator program and the Roundhouse Short Film Fund.
Hi guys, I'm Gabby. I'm a film director and I have a production company called Garrow Studios, and I've been with Roundhouse for 1 year as a workspace member.
Thanks so much, guys. So we're going to start at the beginning. I'd love to hear from you both how you first got into the industries that you're working in, and what were the first steps that you took to kind of build your career and build your confidence. So Gabby, should we start with you? Like, did you always see yourself becoming a director, and how did you like grow your confidence at like the very start?
Yeah, I have a slightly like stumbling journey, I would say, because I started in theater when I was in high school. So I ran a theater production company in Berlin for about 2 years, and I loved it, but I always felt like I eventually wanted to integrate the film industry. I just had no contacts and no prior experience. So I went to university wanting to continue with theater out of possibly a lack of confidence, and then COVID hit, so obviously the live arts weren't accessible anymore. So wanted to make a short film, just didn't really understand technically how to do that, and I had a friend director of mine suggest that I pick up videography to just gain a bit more technical experience, and so I became a videographer for 3 to 4 years, so I'm doing it in a very roundabout way, and eventually moved to London with a videography job, a full-time job, and realized, okay, I feel like I've had the theater directing experience, I'm technically a bit more capable than I was before, and so last year I decided to finally get back to directing, and a lot of that was just self-funding pieces with a little bit of savings that I had, and gaining traction from that, and eventually being able to get paid work.
And would you say it was the experience that you gained from like doing the things like on your own? Was that like, how important was that at the start, like kind of muddling through?
Yeah, I think because I was in high school wanting to do something on my own and not necessarily sticking to the school system to be able to do it, like there were theater classes at my school, but they just didn't feel particularly satisfying. I'm French originally, I went to a French school, and I wanted to do English-based theater, so I think that sort of forced me to find people outside of it. I used all sorts of ridiculous methods, like I went on Craigslist to find my first co-founder, and just try to kind of figure things out independently, and I think what's great about that is that it forces you to wear many different hats all at once. And to just think outside the box, like you don't really need to follow the rules to do any of this. A lot of things that you think might cost money at the start, you can usually get from favors or exchanging things with certain people that are in the industry or that are just willing to help you and be mentors to you along the way. And so I think when it came to actually coming back into film and again, just feeling super like an outsider, just, I didn't know anyone in London either. Just kind of seeing that every single, just like, yeah, looking at the obstacles as like being able to break things down one by one and meeting people. I think just finding others that are also very passionate, maybe in a similar stage of life as you, and willing to kind of put all of their heart and effort into something, I think was very helpful.
Thank you so much. And what about you, Isaac? Like, just take me back to like before, there were any internships or any like even job roles. What was like driving your passion?
I think for me, really, what drove my passion was platforming my community, myself, and people around me. Feeling like our voices were heard, feeling like we're seen in spaces and can belong in these spaces. And film, I guess, was a way for me to do that. So yeah.
And when did you sort of go, okay, I like platforming all of these like different people in my life and like the things that are important to me? When do you start thinking, okay, this is something that I can take more like seriously, to put in like quotes, but as in like actually make a career out of it? And then how did you move from that stage?
I think I started out actually acting. So I was playing a lot of acting roles in friends of mine who were already interested in film, their short films, music videos. And I kind of looked at that and I was like, I want to actually be behind the camera and put on my own people. So I started to assist them and help them out. And that lent me into doing a few workshops and schemes. Like the Roundhouse have some amazing things, but there's other organizations as well. So I got involved in that. And I think that was the first time I realized, oh, film isn't just a passion and a hobby. You can actually earn money for it. And there's multiple roles within the industry. Like you got a chippy, basically a carpenter on set. You have your camera assistants and your camera trainees. You have your sparkies, your electricians. So I was like, oh, wow, like there's actually a pathway for me. Education wasn't my strongest path and route. So I ended up basically kind of like getting a role as a camera trainee. Actually, before that, a runner on set. I basically went on Instagram, IMDb, emails, and I just started messaging people like relentlessly. And I got a lot of rejections. And I got that one yes, and I was a runner on set making teas and coffees on a music video. And that was my first time. I was like, wait, I can get paid to be on set with some people who are incredible at what they do and learn from them. So I'd say that was the first time, and that's kind of how I got onto it.
I guess it sounds like you both have to like, you have to have a bit of audacity, I feel, when you're when you're sort of very much when you're starting out, you're just sort of like, ask anyone and everyone. I think that's like really important. Were there any sort of, sorry, Isaac, just back to you again. When you were a runner, was that before you did a thing at the Roundhouse, and how much like help did that give you to like kind of have the confidence to apply to something like the Roundhouse?
That was quite a few years before I applied for the Roundhouse. So I went on to be a runner, and then I actually got my first ever high-end TV film role in the locations department. And I would say, like, if you're trying to break into this industry, you can't turn your nose up to roles. You've just got to take what you've got. Like, if you're anything like me, I don't have family in film or friends in film. Like, I was really just trying to make it happen for myself. So I got a role as a location marshal. I was basically putting up easy ups, which are like gazebos, like over there, putting down bins. And I used that as an opportunity to basically chat to people on set and get to know individuals, create relationships. I got to know a woman on the camera department who took a chance with me and brought me on for dailies. So I went on then to work as a camera trainee, built myself up with also camera assist. So that was a few years before the Roundhouse. And then the Roundhouse Film Fund came around, and I was still working on my own projects, DP in short films and documentaries. And I was like, I want to take a chance with some of my own writing and go for that. So audacity is key, confidence is key, believe in yourself. Yeah, I would say it took me a few years, but then it's all around your own timing. That was my journey. Yours won't necessarily be the same.
No, I mean, everyone will have their own different timings and what they get onto, and a lot of it is, some of it's down to luck, some of it's down to like the times and how many opportunities there are actually out there. One thing you can kind of control a little bit is like starting small and building a portfolio, and I really wanted to get into that with both of you because it's quite especially, I mean, I think it's important in creative industries in general, but like having a portfolio to show to people, to show what you can do, as well as those jobs. How do you start building that? And did you ever struggle with when you didn't have as much experience? How do I know if this is good? Like, did you ever have those thoughts sort of running through your brain and just sort of have to power through them? Start with you, Gabby.
Yeah, I think what Isaac said, I'm going to kind of rebound on that, which is just try to meet as many people that will get you onto sets in any capacity. So I also started out as a spark, helping out with the lighting department, for example, with no intention of doing that long term. But I think if you're able to put yourself in the shoes of every single person on set, you will have a better holistic understanding of what it means to run a set in the case of directing, for example, or just any alternate perspective that might be useful to you. So I would say also that there is this feeling of doing a favor for people and having that be maybe paid off in the long run. So you're building connections, you're helping people out. Usually it comes with very little money, and I actually think, yeah, you build friendships by being able to do it. So I also did like an AC course at NFTS for a week to learn a bit more about how to be a focus puller and how to be a second AC. So just anything that kind of helps you build that understanding of what it means to work in this industry and to relate to more people on a set is the first thing. And then once you gain a better understanding, I think starting with something that you feel passionate about. I think one of the difficult things about, I'll speak for directing specifically at the beginning, is understanding how to build your voice, because you have limited resources. You're obviously, it takes a lot of money to make films, and I started off on 16 millimeter, so we're always having to rent cameras and buy the film and process the film, which costs a lot. And being able to actually repeatedly have that experience to experiment is hard. And so I think understand how, like, what your resources are. If it's, you have £100 to start with, fine. What can you spend that on? And find, maybe it's a story, maybe it's a character, maybe it's a song. I always recommend with directors to start with music videos, because I think it's such an easy way of doing something really visual and really experimental, where you get to, fully put a little bit of yourself into the work, and go from there. And maybe it's, you have like a phone and that's it, but use the resources that you have. And I would say be very focused on being able to output as quickly as possible at the start. I think people spend a really long time trying to perfect things as opposed to just seeing it as practice. And so I would really encourage like maximal output for like a year before you start to refine and figure out exactly what it is that you want to do.
Mm-hmm. No, I feel that as well, completely. Do you want to add to that, Isaac?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, no, I think that was all really great advice. And I think, it's sort of as well touched on not being a perfectionist and like getting your content or getting whatever it is that you're creating out. How do you start building that portfolio and build that confidence?
I would say playing. Like, playing, having fun is the key.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do this because I knew there was money in it. I done it because I had fun being with my friends, telling stories and being on set. And I think that's how it always starts. Have fun with what you do. Play. I think a lot of reflection with myself as of recently is, how do I get back that essence of play within my practice, within my work? So I think just go out there, be ballsy with it. Get your friends, get your cousin, whoever's around you, like you said, and just go and make something that you're passionate about. That's how you start making the portfolio, and then refine it as you go along. Find what your style is, what the commentary you want to make. But just have fun, play, and use what you have. Your iPhone, your smartphone, a camera, an old VHS from your grandma. Just have fun with it. I would say that.
Yeah, great advice. And it keeps it fun. It keeps it interesting as well. You've both touched on like the importance of connecting with peers and like people that that you can help each other out with different like creative projects. I'd love to talk kind of a bit more about networking and potentially the difference between like potentially the difference between community building and networking. And I think they are different things, but sometimes they kind of intersect. Isaac, again, could you just like start on that and tell me your thoughts, because I know you're very into like community building.
For sure. So starting on community and networking, I would say when I think about all the projects I've delivered, it actually has been the people who I've come up with to help me make the steps I need within my career, rather than the people above me. And what do I mean by that? It's the people I would camera assist, like an incredible woman called Demetria. She was my cinematographer for the film we done with the Roundhouse. Mm-hmm. And that is someone I've assisted for years. And when I came to her and I was like, listen, we don't have budget, but we've got this project that I've written and I want to direct. Will you basically do it for no money at all for me? She was like, yeah, we're going to make it happen. We're gonna do it. And that's like a relationship, a friendship I was able to build through the years of giving favors, really, giving favors, helping others out. Mm-hmm. I would say networking for me is a term that's come around, but I didn't know what it was when I started. In a sense, I was just getting to know my peers, the people who were starting at the same time as me in the industry, and we'd create relationships outside of work. Coffees are important. If you're anything like me, you didn't drink coffee when you were young and you were like, why am I going to go for a coffee? What's a coffee for? But a coffee is like an unofficial term for like a catch-up, a meeting, seeing what your peers are doing in the industry, what jobs are coming up. I would say don't underplay that and go for some coffees with your peers and with maybe some more experienced people around you who might have a bit of extra time. And then community building is supporting the people you're coming up with. It's creating the spaces where you can be vulnerable, talk about the hurdles. I haven't got any work coming up, or we're going to make our own film screening of emerging filmmakers, and we're going to platform ourselves because we're making incredible commentaries as well. I think it's both of those things, and I don't know if that answered your question, but that's what it feels like to me, yeah.
No, it really does, and I think there's, like you said, they do overlap, but they are also like integral in different spaces, and yeah, I wonder what you were thinking on that, Gabby, about like networking, community building, and how they sort of intersect.
Yeah, I had a couple of thoughts on this. I think this idea of seeing things as how can I meet people and build friendships is a really good way to start because it's easy and it's just about connecting with people. I think on the community building side of things, one thing that I've noticed is because I have my own production company as well, a lot of what we try to do, me and my co-founder, is we talk a lot about culture and building culture within it. And what do we provide people with, even in the context of we can't pay people, how can we make the experience as interesting for them as possible, where they get to learn as much, where we get to meet them where they're at in their own career and provide something in return. It can be like little gestures, like making sure that everyone gets a card at the end of the shoot that says thank you for the specific thing that they did, or it can be something, like throwing events, or thinking of it really as like a production is almost like yes, you're making a film, but it's like an event business in certain senses, and so you have to kind of keep that in mind as you're doing it. And then I think in terms of the actual networking element, one thing I will say has been incredibly helpful for me has been having a mentor. I'm mentored by the managing director of Canada, which is a music video production company. And that has unlocked so many doors for me, and being able to build that kind of connection over time. I think the way that I met Marta, is her name, was through doing the FOMO mentorship program. And I think a lot of places, Roundhouse included, have mentorship programs tied to them. And so that has been incredibly valuable, even in terms of, I'm doing a short film with working title producers right now. Almost all of our HODs have come from people that Marta has introduced me to. So having those kinds of higher leverage connections goes a very, very long way. And then I think in terms of networking, I think people confuse this idea of you network as, you just show up to an event and chat a little bit and then you leave. Whereas I think something that is much more utilized actually in the tech space is this idea of warm introductions or direct introductions. And what that means is, and not in a slimy, like I'm trying to get something out of you way, but when you meet someone that you find interesting and they talk about a collaborator that they have or someone that they think has been really, really helpful recently, asking for that contact and getting directly introduced to them goes a much longer way. People don't respond to cold outreach much, but if you get warmly introduced, it just completely ups your chances of having a meaningful exchange with someone, and making sure also that the people that you are meeting are relevant to what you want to do. So whether that's via email or in person or whatever it is, I would say warm introductions are 100% the way to go, whether it's general networking, finding funding, anything that has to do with meeting people and communicating about what you're passionate about and building something together.
And Isaac, do you have any practical tips as well when you're potentially in a space where it's not, that kind of sense of community building, which I think comes very naturally to you, when you're in a space that's a bit more unnatural, where it's like there are people in a room where you're like, I should meet them, I need to go and talk to them. How do you handle that situation? Because I think that's obviously a really good strategy, but sometimes you don't always have a warm open as well. So how would you handle those situations?
I think
It's not fun.
To be honest with you, it's a hard one to answer. Because when I look at myself, how did I do it? How do I do it? And I think imposter syndrome is something that probably a lot of us struggle with, feeling like you're not belonging in a space or deserve to be in that space alongside your peers. And I don't think there is a clear-cut answer. I think you have to just take trust in yourself and who you are as a person. And if you do want to speak to that individual, take the risk. You might get rejected. They might not want to put a hand out to you, but you've got to take the risk. We only live one life. And I've had plenty of rejections, as many as exceptions as well. So it's you just have to be I might want to go speak to that person who is a DP or a producer or an investor, and just trust yourself and trust your journey and trust what you're offering to them or what they might offer to you. I don't think there's a technique. I mean, small talk is great, but sometimes also people can tell it's small talk and they're just what do you want from me?
Yeah, you're well.
So it's just just go for it. That's my advice. Sorry, it's not the best, but you just have to go for it and trust yourself.
I think it is. I think there's no other way apart from go for it. And even if you don't feel like you have the experience, so at least you have passion, and if the passion comes out, then I think that's half the battle.
100%. And to add, actually, if it is you're looking to start and it's just your first junior role, I think lead in with the openness that you're just hungry to learn, you're willing to learn, you're not carrying an ego I've done all of these projects, and you're just I'm in film, we use a term called green. You're green, you're new, you're fresh, and lean into the fact that you're green. I I done that. I was scared about doing it at first, but I got used to it because at the end of the day, you're junior, you're starting out and you're learning, and that's okay to act like, to show that you don't know everything. I think people appreciate that a lot more. So maybe lean with that and go with that. Go with the fact I'm new, but I'm willing to learn and I'll do the graft. Like, yeah.
Thanks so much. And you're both like in the film industry as well as a few other things, and we'll get onto that in a little bit. But I'd love to know, do you have any like resources, specific resources to like find that first role? I know you sort of mentioned that you put things out on Craigslist, but now that you're a bit more, which is great, but now you're a bit more like embedded in the industry, do you feel like there's places that you could advise people to go to find more opportunities, like to get that first role?
In the early stages, I used Facebook groups quite a lot. I found that to be very helpful. Even also, I mean, when I was doing my first short film 2 years ago, I also recruited via Facebook groups, so I know from the other side that that's a place that people tend to go to. Honestly, a place like the Roundhouse, like being a workspace member, has been invaluable because you're meeting people of all sorts of creative industries all the time. So again, just making friends in this way. The first few sets that I was on, it was just friends that happened to get a job on something that would bring me there. And then I'm not sure if you have, Isaac, any ideas in terms of like online resources, because I think for me, most of it, to be honest, has been person to person, but maybe you have something.
Yeah, definitely. I think there is a handful of organizations that you can reach out to and tap in with, and I think it would be really helpful. So when I started out, I mentioned I got involved with this organization called Fully Focused, Million Youth Media. They're an incredible organization, and I think you should all tap in with them. You have organizations like Mama Youth, the Roundhouse. Again, all organizations kind of centered around training people within film, television, but also creating pathways. I'd also say you've got to tap in with like the BFI, Screen Skills. These are all organizations that provide like entry-level opportunities, but some of them also go a bit further than that. Yeah, I would say those organizations off the top of my head are some incredible organizations to check out, and everyone should definitely tap in with them to some level. I think it's kind of what you can tell from our journeys is we've had our hands in multiple different pies, and if you're starting out without a clear connection, then that's the way you have to go about it. Just increase your odds, you know, be in as many spaces as you can be like you are today.
If I can just add also,
Yeah, of
just
course.
Instagram outreach. I think most of the people that I found in this last year have been via Instagram. For better or for worse, is how people share their portfolios nowadays. And so I would say, even if it is just sending a message to someone you don't know, maybe it's a cinematographer that you like and you want to be on one of their sets or something like that, if you send a message that actually has something about the person that you've noticed or about their work that you like, a personal message is always really lovely to receive. And so I think that goes a super long way than having coffees, as Isaac's mentioned.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you both as well, speaking of Instagram, I was wondering, so this is something I struggle with a lot. It's like, how good at social media do you feel like you need to be? And is it like a really, really useful tool for you, or can you get by without it in your industries? Isaac?
I would say it depends, right? For me, I wear two hats. I run a production company and a business, and then also there's having a career. I think you can get by without having it, to be honest with you. I think it's a good tool, and we should all use it, but if it feels like it's compromising your mental health or taking away from your life, I don't think it's the make or break it. There's plenty of people with very successful careers that don't have Instagrams that are public or they're private. So if you want to use it, it is a great tool. You can promote what you do, you can be in more people's faces because people can follow and engage with you, but it's not the make or break it. You don't have to have it, and I don't think that's the only route. You can exchange numbers and emails, and it's a lot more personable. So that's my personal opinion.
It's interesting. Gabby?
I think it depends on what you want to do in the context of film. I think I know many like Sparks and Gaffers or ACs, for example, that don't have social media and that just get through from word of mouth. I think in the early stages, if you're something like a director or a cinematographer where your work is very visual, I do think it's a necessary evil. I think you can get to a certain point where maybe you're signed with a production company or an agency where then you can kind of discard it. But I think in that intermediate stage in modern day, because it's not to say, you know, directors back then didn't need social media, but I think as it is, there is, I would almost bookmark 2 to 3 years of just saying, I'm going to accept that this is a part of my life. Maybe I'm wrong, but I do think it's almost a tool that's accepted as part of the way that you promote yourself nowadays. So if you are able to kind of find the ways to get good boundaries for your own mental health and mental sanity along the way, I do think it's worth overcoming if it means that in the long term you don't have to use it.
Thank you so much. So I got distracted by the fire that was emitting from the room. But no, that is really interesting. It's interesting to hear two different opinions on that as well, because it's something that I always think people have different opinions about with social media, and there are two ways of doing it. So that's really great. I wanted to move on a little bit to like what you're doing now, both of you, and like what you're currently working on. Isaac, we could start with you because I know you also do film, but at the moment you're focusing on curation. I'd love to hear a bit about that and the sort of challenges that you face in the production side of it.
Yeah, I would say I have evolved within my craft. So it's not just film that I do. I don't just DP projects, but I also curate. And I would say the challenges are interesting. Coming from an environment that's quite intense and fast moving, I feel like I felt quite comfortable in that way. But I guess the challenge always is the biggest and most simple one is the finance. You know, finding the financiers and the people to support the projects you do. I love it because it's the space where, like I said, for me, film, I got into it because I liked stories, I like platforming myself, my community, and the people around me. Curation is just another adaptation of that. For example, we have an exhibition coming up this year, and we're going to be curating a panel of filmmakers, and we're going to be showing films on some screens, along with some fine art and photography. I would say it's always logistical challenges, managing people, expectations, timing, and then finding the right venue and space for us. Yeah,
I'm going to pick up on the funding part a bit more because I think it is a key issue. How do you go about like finding funding? Like, are there any processes you go through? Is there anything you've learned in the last few years that you can share?
I would say we were having a chat about this earlier, and it was really, really helpful, to be honest. I think there's no clear route, and there's different ways to get funding. There's public funding, there's private investment, and it's also just loads of conversations and coffees. So going and having a sit down, jumping on a call, pitching, kind of selling yourself. It's a new one, but it's interesting. I don't think there's a clear-cut way, and I feel like I'd love for you to expand on it as well, based on stuff we were kind of chatting about.
Because you're working on a short documentary or a short film.
A short film, yeah. I'm doing with Working Title. We're shooting in April, and so we had to go through the funding process as well, which was a super new experience, and I feel like I actually learned a lot in that regard. So our funding came in 3 different sources in the end. I think there's many other places that it could come from in theory, and maybe this is good to know if you have your own project that's maybe more, like the difficult thing about short films is you're not making financial return in any way, so you really have to pitch people on who you are, what your passion is, and why maybe down the line, maybe there's like some cool cultural association to being tied to the film. But so we got funding from 3 different places. We got VC investment into the company, so actually it was really helpful to have our company registered as a vehicle to put money through. And that was, we weren't giving away much equity, but for us it was significant enough that it still made a dent in our short film budget. So that was helpful, and that was a much more financially driven type of conversation that we would have. And then it was warm intros that we got connected to people that were in that position where they could give us funding from their VC funds. The second bit was from art donors, so we got some donations from theater donors specifically that were interested enough in film to be willing to donate into the movie as well. That was a lot more charity driven, I would say, than anything else, and so it was more about pitching the story, pitching the team, making sure that the funds are going towards helping people live on making art, which is a hard thing to do. And I think most art donors care about making sure that people within this industry can survive, which was completely our intention with the film as well. And then the third one was selling executive producer credits. And so that was a much more, and this is aside from like crowdfunding, which is usually the typical go-to, but I think crowdfunding, you get much smaller amounts and it's more difficult to snowball. Selling executive producer credits, is more to do with selling people on this idea that your film might turn into a feature film, for example, or maybe it gets acquired by like Channel 4 or BBC, and then there is some degree of financial return. But again, most of the idea is that because maybe the story is interesting enough or the people that you have on board are interesting enough that they would be tied to it in some kind of promotional marketing sense, and that's interesting to people that have maybe a bit more money and want to attach either themselves as individuals or their production companies to what you're making. The tricky thing about that is you have to make sure to still only bring people on that you want to work with, because they become collaborators at that point. That's some degree of producing involved. So you do have to be a little bit more picky about that, but I would say that's more of like a sales type conversation. And to be completely transparent with that, the way that we did it was we got to a certain point in the funding where we technically had enough money to make the film. We wanted extra to make sure everyone was well paid. And so we really pitched it as if like, we have enough to make this, we're already making it, but if you think that you're interested enough and you align enough with our incentives, we're really happy to hear about your offers. So we kind of flipped the script a little bit, and people become much more interested when you're in a position to already make the thing in the first place. So very different types of conversations, but it was really, really helpful to learn.
And I'm just really intrigued, like how did you, because obviously all of this is probably researchable, but it's quite hard to know how to research something as specific as that. So how did you learn all of that stuff? Like, how did you become like knowledgeable about it and then be able to implement it?
I have a lot of friends who are founders, like tech founders, and so a lot of this were principles that I spoke to them about that I tried to apply to the film industry. I think sometimes we have this idea that what we're doing is almost separate, or the rules don't apply to us, but we have businesses, and what we're doing is still, like with feature films, maybe not so much short films, but there is financial return attached to what you're doing, and so being able to not just speak the creative language, but also speak the sales language, the business language is so key, and I think if you're able to master that, and again, see it as a necessary evil, you will have an edge over most of the industry, because I think people don't, it's like an identity issue. They don't want to associate themselves with having to market themselves in such an obvious way. But I think it's a huge advantage. So speaking to founders, tech founders, people in the engineering community, and then just practice. Like a lot of the early conversations that I had, or that my co-founder had, like we just stumbled, we messed up, we went out to the US to race for a little bit. Some of it was successful, some of it really wasn't, really embarrassed ourselves. And so I think just having like courage to me is one of the biggest virtues a person can have. And I think in this industry especially, like being willing to just throw yourself into it, and maybe you say completely the wrong thing, and that's okay, and you've learned from the experience. But so yeah, a mixture of just kind of going for it and asking people loads of questions in the relevant fields.
That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Just before we get on to questions from the audience, I just have a couple more, like a bit more general kind of advice questions. For someone entering the industry today, like what trends or changes within the, like, I guess the film industry or the curation industry, do you think they should be paying attention to? Trends or like things in the news or things that you think like are changing rapidly within the film industry that you think are good to know about?
It's a hard question.
You can go to Gabby first if you need a little time.
I think there's two things. I think, especially in the context of, for example, being a UK-based director, a typical way to come up would have been like using music videos, as I mentioned before, to kind of show a little bit of your work and a bit of your style in a way that isn't so, has like a strong cost implication. Music and marketing are changing very rapidly. I know a lot of people in the music video industry and the commercial industry that are becoming very pessimistic about the fact that everything has been shortened. Our attention spans obviously aren't as long as they used to be. And so I think keeping an eye a little bit on like, because these used to be like gateway mediums almost to kind of, tip your foot into the water and figure out whether something is for you. And I think that's shifting very rapidly. And I think people in those industries are worried about it. So either get into it now or just, keep an eye on the landscape, I would say, because it might be that there's a new short form medium that is like the best way to kind of enter into as like an early stage filmmaker. And then on some level, AI, unfortunately, I do think it's a good idea to stay a little bit aware about how it's shaping our industry. A lot of production companies now also have AI branches. I'm not pro AI at all. I'm not completely anti-AI. I think there's a place for it, but I think it's a separate market. But I do think it's good to have a stance on it and to understand how it's going to shape our industry, what jobs are going to be reduced. I think a lot of the more technical jobs, unfortunately, are going to start to progressively disappear. And so maybe it's understanding where you can fit in based on your own skill set. I'm saying very vague things right now because I think it's really quickly evolving and it's hard to say anything very concrete. But I think not just within the arts, but within the general word, understanding how artificial intelligence is shaping a lot of what we do. But that's very vague. So,
I mean, it's hard to pin down AI anyway. So I think if you can keep an eye on it and understand it, how it's going to like affect one industry, then I think that's quite a good thing to look into. So it's a good direction. Isaac, do you have anything to add to like things that you think?
I just have to 100% second the AI standpoint. Just understanding where you stand within it, I think is so important because it's all about positionings and how we play our careers and progress. Off the top, nothing really else, no.
That's okay, no worries. I've got another question for you, Isaac, then. If you could go back to the start of your like career, right at the start, and you could like do something differently or do something more, what would it be?
If I could go back to my career, I would just drill the importance of meeting, going for coffees, and just not having that fear of rejection. I think we've talked about the idea of just having audacity, confidence, send those cold messages on Instagram. LinkedIn is a great vessel too. Use LinkedIn, emails, just do it because there's no setback from when you're starting from ground zero,
Thank you. Gabby, do you have any
things I would do differently?
Things that you do differently, yeah, or something you change or something you do more of. Words of advice, kind of general.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to get a little bit complacent with the work that you do. The second that things do start to kind of turn up, and like, for example, the position that I'm in right now with our company. We're starting to get more music video commissions. We're starting to get short film commissions, and that's very exciting. And I think it's easy to accept. I think especially in the UK, in terms of like film institutions, there's a much slower route to being able to do features, which tends to be the goal that people go for long term. And just remembering that you don't need to play by those rules. So me and my co-founder are writing a feature film script right now. I don't see that there's any reason why we can't start pitching it this year, as opposed to waiting another 2 to 3 years to maybe cushion our other skills. And I think, yeah, I think the best way forward is to just to go for the dream directly. I know a lot of people, for example, who want to be cinematographers, and they really strongly believe that to do that, they have to spend 10 years in the camera department. And I think fundamentally you're training different skills. So I think it's great to be able to research and take the time that you need to take and have a good sense of self-awareness around that. Maybe you are someone that needs like stepping stones in a more fundamental way, and that's completely fine. But I would really encourage people to figure out exactly what it is that they want and then just go for it as quickly as possible, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Thank you so much. So we're going to have some questions from the audience. We have a hand up already down here. Yes. We have someone coming around with a mic, I think, as well. Where are they? Never mind. I can give you my mic. I'll run round.
I'm Chanel. I met Isaac before. I shouted him in the focus of documentary. And my question is, what advice would you give to young people that want to start doing directing and camera work?
Thank
Firstly,
you.
hello, bro. How are you? It's good to see you again. I would say, for me, looking to get into, maybe I'll answer the camera, you answer the direction. Looking to get into camera, it's kind of, I said it earlier, and I don't want to sound boring, but put yourself out there, go to some events. We just had it already, so it's not helpful this year, but every year they do the BSC Expo, which is a great place to be as well, and to see some of the latest camera gear, lighting gear, and also just mingle with people who work in the camera department. I'd say for next year, definitely go to that, and just attend spaces, put out those emails, create your own work, just have fun, start to build your portfolio when you're in a position to either shoot your own project, or if you want to follow the more traditional route and go through the camera department, then you maybe have some talking points to chat to people about. But yeah, I'd say just start getting out those messages to people and meeting people, because that's the only way we're going to get things going. We can think about it and plan it all day, but sometimes you just have to act, and then you can work it as you go along.
Yeah, completely exactly the same. I think just make as many things as possible. Set yourself deadlines. Like last year, I did not achieve this at all, but I told myself it's my first year of directing. I'm going to try to make 8 commercials this year. That just did not happen. But I think setting a slightly bigger goal than you think you can achieve forces you to kind of keep the speed up. I ended up making 3 or 4 projects last year, and that was more, I think, than if I hadn't set the goal in the first place. So just make things, experiment, learn from them, reflect as much as possible between the different shoots that you have. And yeah, I think directing is like any other skill. You learn it. Like I remember at the start of the year, last year, I felt like I couldn't think in images. I couldn't think in shots. Like I just felt like my brain was quite slow in that regard. Like I remember the first time I had to shot list just thinking like, you know, we put so much work into pre-production and finally I have to do this and I have no clue how to do it. And you do learn it. I feel like now I read a script and I can see things in a visual way that I couldn't before. So all of these things are skilled. They can be learned and you just have to practice.
Thank you so much. Thanks you for your question. Do we have time for one more? Yes. On the floor here. We're getting the mic to you.
Hi, I'm Shakila. I am developing a music blog website showcasing independent artists and creative spaces. As a young entrepreneur, there's a lot of responsibility on my plate. Do you have any advice of how to handle your work-life balance schedule so that you don't reach the state of burning out?
I'm super honest. I think I kind of accept that in this phase of life, there's going to be no work-life balance. Most of it is work. I mean, I try to take 1 day off a week where I spend with my friends or my partner, and I don't think about anything else, and I try to live my life, because I think as a filmmaker or as an entrepreneur in general, like you need to have your own existence and your own set of experiences. But I think I just accept that for now, this is going to be all-consuming. When I sense the burnout is coming, I do try to slow myself down. And yeah, I think I just try to keep a little bit self-aware about where I'm at mentally, but I think it's go for a few years, and then maybe I'll have a better answer for you afterwards.
Yeah, just to add on top of that, I think it's important to understand yourself and the systems that work for you. So for me, I know when I wake up in the morning, I've got to go and do some kind of movement, just because it grounds my mind. I have ADHD, and like I feel just all over the place if I haven't worked out. So I go, not just working out even, I'll go for a walk, I'll go for a run, swim, stretch, something. Like, know the systems that help ground you so you can be the best possible you when you're showing up for yourself or the people around you. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Thank you so
sports
much.
actually is quite good. I'll add to that.
That's all we have time for, unfortunately. But thank you so much. Can we have a round of applause for our lovely panelists? And thank you so much for coming as well. It's been, I hope you've left with some like good information, and shout out to the team that makes this all happen behind the scenes, because that's what we're here for. Thanks, guys.